Hello, everyone. Today we are buckling up our ski boots, zipping up those imaginary jackets, and getting ready to shred some data. Today we're hitting the slopes in a way you've never seen before, not with skis or snowboards, but with charts, graphs, and maybe even a few unexpected avalanches in sight. Today I present to you ski resorts. Me and my team, Hannah, John, Mark, and myself, Sarah, will be discussing the best resort for Mark and his family. Now let's talk about what to look forward to during our presentation. We're first going to start off with an introduction to the topic, then move to an analysis of the data, then to a comparison of the resorts, finally to our final recommendation, and then to our reflection. I'm going to pass it on to John, who's going to do our introduction.
All right, meet Mark, our overworked coffee-fueled professor from Edmonton who enjoys skiing park. He's been locked in an academic combat with Gen Z and dry race markers for the past 8 months. So yeah, it's time for a break. Now his wife, she's a real adrenaline junkie. Skiing is her thing, speed is her love language. Together, they're on a mission, not just any trip, but the ultimate ski getaway. The big question, do they stay loyal to the Great White North, or do they start chasing peaks somewhere abroad?
Thanks, John. So, the first question that we're going to ask is it better to go abroad and travel, or is it better to stay locally and in Canada? This will help narrow down some of the data so it's not too overwhelming and we can kind of figure out the best resort. So, the data set already includes the resort name, the country, the season that they are open, their highest and lowest point, the total slopes, as well as the total lifts. It also includes is it child friendly and their terrain distribution from beginner to advanced. So Mark's dilemma is should he stay in Canada or should he go? So, starting off with our travel considerations for Canada, we're looking at resorts such as Sunshine, Lake Louise, Whistler, Jasper, Sun Peaks, Fernie, and Revelstoke. We can see that we're measuring it from a distance in kilometers from Edmonton, and they're all within driving distance, no more than 12 hours. Considering what's happening with traveling to the States and stuff, we really want to consider inflation as well as the time spent that it's going to take to get to resorts outside of Canada. So, we'll keep this in mind for the next slide. Now, taking a look at the travel considerations when going to an abroad ski resort, we're looking at resorts like Aspen, Jackson Hole, Vail, Park City. These are all located in the USA. We also have Chamonix, Niseko, St. Anton. These are all abroad in further countries. We can see that the distance from Edmonton has increased a lot, and it's no longer possible really to drive to these destinations anymore. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to keep Mark in Canada today because we think it's the best bet for him and his family.
Here, we're looking at the number of lifts across different Canadian ski resorts, broken down into chairlifts in blue, gondolas in orange, and surface lifts in red. The main takeaway is Whistler clearly dominates with 37 total lifts, making it the most developed ski resort in Canada. That includes a wide variety of lift types, giving it both capacity and accessibility across its massive terrain. Some comparison points is the next highest would be Mont Tremblant, Big White, and Panorama, but none of them even come close to Whistler's total. BC resorts tend to lead overall, likely because of their larger terrain and higher tourist volume. Alberta has a top few performers too, like Lake Louise and Sunshine Village, but they're still behind in lift count. Why it matters is more lifts usually mean shorter wait times, better access to terrain, and a more efficient ski experience, especially during peak season. But to wrap up, if you're planning a trip and want the biggest bang for your buck in terms of lift access, Whistler is the clear winner, but other resorts might offer a more low-key or local experience depending on what you're after. This slide looks at the total lift capacity, basically how many people each resort lifts can move per hour. The main takeaway is once again, Whistler is way ahead of every other resort with a capacity of over 177,000 riders per hour. That's more than double most other top resorts. Some comparison points is Mont Tremblant and Big White are next, but they're still far behind. Resorts like Silver Star, Panorama, and Lake Louise are in the middle range. Smaller resorts like Apex or Kimberley are at the bottom with lower capacity, which can mean longer wait times on busy days. Why this matters is a high lift capacity means shorter lift lines, faster access to slopes, and a smoother experience, especially during peak weekends and holidays. So when we talk about lift infrastructure, it's not about the number of lifts, it's how efficient they are. And Whistler isn't just the biggest, it's also the most capable of handling high volume without bottlenecks. This chart compares the longest ski run at top resorts across Canada, measured in kilometers, and some of the numbers might surprise you. The main takeaway is that Revelstoke Mountain Resort leads the pack with the longest continuous run in the country at 15 kilometers. That's more than double the length of most other resorts on the list. In comparison, Whistler and Kicking Horse come around each offering 11-kilometer runs, which are still huge descents for anyone looking for a long, uninterrupted ride, while Sunshine Village, Sun Peaks, and Silver Star follow closely with 8-kilometer runs, while Lake Louise, Red Mountain, and Big White each hit 7 to 8-kilometer range. Most other well-known resorts like Mont Tremblant, Panorama, and Marmot Basin fall into that 5 to 6, and at the low end, places like Mount Washington, Le Massif offer runs around 3 kilometers. Why this matters is longer runs mean more time shutting down that mountain and less time on the lifts. If you're looking for extended top-to-bottom action, these stats matter, especially for snowboarders and skiers chasing those marathon descents. To wrap up, if you're hunting Canada's longest single run, Revelstoke is the undisputed champion. Pair that with the length and with its legendary vertical and terrain, and you've got one of the most epic riding experiences in the country.
In this section, we will be finding out which Canadian resort has the most snow parks. Tied at the top spot with 5 apiece is Sunshine Village and Whistler. Apex Resort, Lake Louise, and Mont Saint Anne both have 4, and the rest of the resorts have a pretty even split amongst those who have 1, 2, or 3 parks. If Mark likes to get some air, Whistler or Sunshine is his place to be.
So, what is the cheapest price per person and where? The price given in the database was the European currency, as well as the price was measured 1 ski pass for 1 adult in 1 day in the main season. Using the calculated field by multiplying the price by the current exchange rate, which is 1.56, we can view this dashboard in the Canadian dollar. We can see that both maps have a variation of shades of blue circles. The color and size represent the price. The larger, the darker the bubble, the more the price. And vice versa, the smaller, the lighter the bubble, cheaper the price. Now looking at the world map on the top right, we can see that in Canada, the cheapest resort is Cypress Mountain at $68.64, located just north of Vancouver. The other circle on the same visual is the cheapest resort worldwide, which is only $21.84. This resort is Garnier, located in Georgia. However, they decided not to fly out of the country. We can take a closer look at the resorts in only Canada. Looking at the bottom visualization, you can probably first notice the strong divide between the circles, where most of the resorts in the database are in and around British Columbia, while a few others are on the East Coast. If we assume that Mark's current residence is in Edmonton, we will exclude the East Coast options as outliers. So getting rid of the faraway locations in Canada and only focusing on the West Coast locations, we can use a new image and a new question. How much do they want to spend on their vacation per person per day? Assuming that there's no bundle of 1 week or weekend pass, we filter the price to only include the resorts that are under $100 as their budget, which makes this visualization that highlights the top 4 cheapest locations in Canada. The most expensive is the Apex Resort at $81.12. Next is Castle Mountain, which is located the only location in Alberta at $78, and this location is right next to Banff National Park. Just south of that one is Kimberley at $76.44. And lastly, the cheapest location in all of Canada, in this database at least, is Cypress Mountain at $68.64. The question we asked here was, does the terrain match their skills? Our examples say that Mark likes moderate or intermediate slopes, and his wife likes difficult slopes. To look for a balance of each, we sorted the resorts by most expensive at the top and the cheapest at the bottom. We have this bar chart below, where the blue represents beginner, orange is intermediate, and the red is the difficult slopes. It is obvious to say that Castle Mountain has the most difficult slopes with the least amount of intermediate slopes, while Cypress Mountain has an equal number of intermediate slopes to difficult slopes, which means it's 22 slopes each. And this would be perfect, so they can go on each of their preferred slopes the same number of times, with it being a new slope every time. The other two options are Apex and Kimberly. However, they both have more intermediate slopes than difficult slopes, as Apex has 7 more intermediate and Kimberly has 5 more.
After comparing cost, terrain, lift access, and snow parks, the best fit for Mark and his wife is Cypress Mountain. First off, it's the most affordable option at just $68.64 per person, which keeps things budget friendly without sacrificing experience. For Mark, this mountain really stands out with 3 snow parks, so he can ride features, hit jumps, and get his park fix. At the same time, it offers a balanced terrain with beginner, intermediate, and advanced runs. That makes it perfect for his wife, who's always chasing speed and challenge. Plus, it's super accessible, just outside of Vancouver, with great lift access and beautiful West Coast views. So overall, Cypress delivers the right mix of fun, value, and variety, making it the ultimate ski getaway for both of them.
Throughout our journey to the ski resort, we've compared many different ski resorts both home and abroad, creating visualizations based on distance, price, chairlift capacity, run length, terrain difficulty, number of snow parks, and last but not least, providing Mark with a solid recommendation for his next adventure.
It looks like Mark's family ski trip is officially ready to go. Now all he has to worry about is who's packing the snacks and who's carrying the skis. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation, and we'll see you on the slopes.